All right, good evening, everybody. It is 6:30, and I will call to order the August 16, 2023 Cedarburg School Board meeting. This is a regular meeting of the Cedarburg School Board and is a public meeting. Prior notices have been placed in the district, and additional copies were forwarded to the city and town of Cedarburg, as well as the News Graphic and the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's move to recognitions. Dr. Clark.
All right, this evening we have one big recognition on the agenda. We are proud to announce that for the 2022-23 school year, the Wisconsin RTI Center has recognized Webster Middle School, West Lawn Elementary School, Parkview Elementary School, and Thorson Elementary School for their work toward implementing a successful school-wide system of supports aimed at closing achievement gaps. Webster was recognized at the gold level in all content areas: mathematics, reading, and behavior. The gold level means that the school has had full implementation in at least in 2 content areas at the universal and selected levels for at least 2 years. Last year, Mr. DeRosa gave us a presentation on that. West Lawn, Parkview, and Thorson were recognized at the silver level in the area of behavior. The silver level recognition is earned when a school has full implementation at the universal level for at least 2 years and at the selected level for at least 1 year. Congratulations.
Congratulations. All right, the consent agenda, Dr. Clark.
All right, with regards to the consent agenda, board members, I ask that you approve the minutes from the regular board meeting on July 19th, 2023, the budget and finance report, which includes the summary of account, check register, check detail, and credit card transaction reports, and the personnel report. Mr. DeRosa, Director of Human Resources, is here to provide an overview of the personnel report.
Thank you. Good evening, school board. This evening, we seek your approval for 3 positions at the educator level. It's Julie Schleicher, special ed teacher at Webster, Abby Nettinger, daily building sub at Parkview, and Christine Bingman, daily sub and IMC teacher at West Lawn Elementary School.
Okay, good. I'll take a motion on the consent agenda.
I would make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I will second that.
Motion and a second. Is there any comment or discussion on the motion?
I'll be abstaining from the budget and finance report portion, so I'll just abstain in general for ease of minutes.
Okay. Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we've got 4 and 1 abstention. Item 4, superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, board. The 2023-24 school year is upon us. This past Monday, Tuesday, and tomorrow, all district administrators participated in what we call Summer Advance. The purpose of Summer Advance is to finalize the preparation for the school year by administration. It has been a great opportunity for our administrators to get to know one another a little bit better and collaboratively prepare for the new school year. Today, all of our new teachers were on campus for our new teacher orientation. There are a total of 4 days of new teacher orientation. During the orientation, the new staff get a tour of the district, get thorough instruction on the ins and outs of the district culture and curriculum, and get to meet their mentors. Next week, we will welcome all staff back to campus on Wednesday as a building day. On Thursday, we will have a district day, which begins with a welcome back presentation in the CPAC, and then our first Cedarburg PLC Institute, where the professional development is provided entirely by CSD staff members. One change regarding the district day is that we will be having a lunch instead of a breakfast. All board members are invited to join us for lunch, and you don't have to do anything. And then, before you know it, it'll be September 1st, and the kids will be here. We are looking forward to another great year of learning in CSD. Also, along with the start of the school year, the construction on the new baseball and softball turf fields at the high school began last week. The construction should be completed by the end of October. We're looking forward to being able to watch our baseball and softball teams play their spring games on non-soggy fields. Thank you, Board.
Could you say the dates just one more time for the Wednesday and the PLC Institute?
Yes, Wednesday is the 23rd, August 23rd, and then August 24th is the district day, and again, that's when we have lunch. And what time is lunch, Alan? 12:15.
That'll probably be good because the board's not cooking it this.
Correct. All right.
Okay, so that's your report?
Yep.
Okay. Next on the agenda is public comment. I'm told that nobody has signed up for public comment, but is there anyone here who wishes to make public comment? All right, I don't see anybody, so then we will move to recommendations, Dr. Clark.
Well, the first recommendation, and I don't see Kara, is the first recommendation is the required 2023-24 special education model procedures. That is in the board packet. It is the same procedures as Kara presented last year.
You want to skip it, maybe in case, were you expecting her to come in and explain, or?
I was not prepared for her not to be here.
Okay, well then let's just go to the
Okay.
B, C, and D. We'll
Okay,
take it
we'll
out
do
of
that.
order. Yeah.
Perfect, all right. B then is the 2023-24 supplemental teacher compensation, and that'll be presented by Ben and Tony.
If you remember, after Act 10, teacher wages were split into base and supplemental wages, and so we've been working off of that ruling ever since then. As part of negotiations, teachers can negotiate up to the base wage, and so there's that portion of supplemental wages that's under control of the district and the board. Really related to the old salary schedule that used to exist within the teacher contracts. What we've done in previous years is have the board take action regarding the supplemental piece as we prepare for negotiations. This enables us to say that if we settle with the base wage at a certain percent, the other piece for supplemental has been addressed by the board at whatever that amount will be. The amount we're presenting tonight is the 4% increase that we built into the preliminary budget for 23-24. Approving a 4% supplemental increase for teachers does not prevent the board from doing an additional amount in the future based on where negotiations land. But we're pretty much getting to this point, or presenting it tonight to help with the process with negotiations to say the supplemental piece has been addressed by the board and approved. Let's talk about the base wage portion as we start negotiations. So what we're looking for tonight is approval of that supplemental piece, a 4% increase as part of that. Like I said, it was built into the preliminary budget for 23-24, so we're accounting for it. And then the next steps would then to engage with the teachers union with the base wage portion of that. So,
How does this compare to the way we've done it in the last couple of years?
we've done it this way the last couple of years with being more proactive with the supplemental piece coming first, and then then negotiations occurring. Before that, it would basically be we negotiate and then make them whole, if you will, on the total wage after the fact. Like I said, this kind of helps the process of negotiations a little bit, just to say, this piece has been taken care of by the board.
Is it feedback from the teachers union that it's helpful, or is that district, solely district perspective?
Based on our feedback, it's helpful for the teachers union to know that that supplemental piece has been taken care of. Because that's typically the question from the union in terms of, we're just talking about the base wage as part of negotiations, what's happening to the supplemental piece.
Right.
And so if we can go into that saying, the board has taken action on this piece, it helps that process.
Yeah. And helping the process is good for not just them, but for us as well, the district as well, the union.
So that 4%, is that the minimum or the maximum?
That is a number we have built into the budget. That is kind of what allows us to be balanced for 23-24. The maximum in terms of what we'll be able to negotiate up to is 8% as part of what was set by CPI for this year. Now that's just the base wage. Supplemental wages, the district and the board has complete control over that. Technically, the district and board will be going over that with the teacher compensation plan continuing on for next year, over 4% that is. So that, the school board has full discretion on that. The limits are pretty much based on the negotiation process, which again is just based on that CPI number for 23-24, which is 8%.
So what were the ranges and the settled rate for 22-23?
What we did last year was 4.7%, and that was CPI.
And that was the recommended CPI amount? Or was
Yeah,
that
that's the most we could have
the
done
max?
within CPI.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any inkling as to what surrounding districts are doing?
It's mostly informal surveys, not a lot have settled yet. When we're talking, it's anywhere between 4% and 5%. That's kind of where they land. We know some districts have gone 8%. We know one district that went 12%. So there are ones that went to the full CPI. But I would say in general in Southeast Wisconsin, based on what information those districts have shared with us, it's been 4 to 5%.
So
And there's a lot of complexities to that, whether they're going through negotiations or they have some kind of supplemental piece they're going above and beyond that. So
okay. So if there was choice by the board to go over 4, that is still an option. We're just basically saying we would come in at least 4.
yeah, I mean the negotiation process is still kind of separate from all of that. So whatever that lands, we'll bring, that process will go through and then bring a resolution to the board once that process is completed. Could be less than 4, could be more than 4%, but the max they can negotiate up to is 8%.
Thanks, Ben.
And we'd be looking for action tonight, so.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve the 23-24 supplemental teacher compensation at 4%, is that
Yep.
right? All right, I would entertain a motion if anyone has one.
I would make a motion to take action on the supplemental teacher compensation plan as outlined by Ben's presentation.
Just to clarify, your motion is to approve it?
Approving a 4% increase in supplemental wages.
Okay.
I will second that.
Got a motion and a second. Are there any comments or discussion? Anyone?
I'm comfortable with this right now. I am looking to see what our neighboring districts, where they're at, and we'll have that information before sitting down at the table, so I think it's a reasonable start.
Okay, good. So we got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it.
May I, just quickly, my laptop doesn't work right now. So Brenda, am I able to borrow your mouse to be able to use that? Or if the rest of the board's okay with me just scooching over and looking at Kate's laptop, I will. But I can't open attachments right now. Yeah, it's just the keyboard, or the keypad. I know. Well, sorry about this. It was working earlier.
Trial run for school starting.
Thank you.
Is it working?
Yep, thank you.
All right.
All right, the third recommendation is regarding the 2023-24 assessment plan for CSD. Kirsten Collins, Director of Technology and Assessment, will present the plan.
Good evening. So per board policy on student assessment, policy 2633,
Is that mic working? Is there a mic
It
working?
is.
Is it?
I'm not talking well into the
Usually
microphone.
talking to each other like this, right?
I know, I always say the board members need to talk into the microphone. Yes, so per board policy 2623 student assessment, the superintendent develops a plan. So that's Alan and myself under his direction for an annual plan of assessments. And before you, you have the assessment plan and presenting that with our district, state, and national assessments. So we'll take a look at that and go over any questions you might have. So Alan has done a nice job and a great chart because he's really good at that in our assessment plan here. And our assessment plan consists of district assessments in the classroom, district standardized assessments, and state assessments, and national assessments. So our families do have the option to opt out of district and state assessments. National assessments, we start with our NAEP assessment, which is an elective federal assessment. Every year in, I think it's in the spring, maybe about December, we get selected, if we get selected. We get notified in like December, and in the spring, our students in grades 4, 8, and 12 might be 1 class, 2 classes, reading, math, selected to take a national assessment. And knock on wood, we haven't been selected in the last 2 years. Doesn't happen that often, that we don't get selected. Maybe one class here at one school or the other, so that is one of our national assessments. Advanced placement exams are a national assessment at the end of our AP classes, and our students are able to test out of things or get credit at college. And then we have a National Merit Scholarship qualifying test, and our select students, any student can opt in to take that assessment to be considered for merit scholarship, and that happens in October. So that's all of our national assessments. Our Wisconsin state assessments, part of the assessment system is the Wisconsin Forward exam, grades 3 through 8 and 10. We currently have our internal data on that assessment. It is embargoed until this fall when the state actually releases the state results. Then our results are able to be released to the public, and they actually are used to compile some of the data in the school's state report card. For students with significant cognitive disabilities, instead of the Forward exam, we can administer the Dynamic Learning Map exam, which is the DLM. It's the same window as the Wisconsin Forward exam. We have less than, I believe it's 3% of our students that take that exam. In the high school level, our grades 9 through 10 take the pre-ACT. It's called pre-ACT Secure because it is the state exam. And then our 11th graders take the ACT. We have another state assessment for our English language learners, and it's called the Access Test. And it determines how our students are progressing, learning the English language, and what services, helps us define what services that we provide to those students. When we get into our district assessments, we are presenting our early literacy assessment. The state actually requires us to have an early literacy assessment to make sure our students are on track to learning to read, because we know that has such a significant impact on a student's learning over the course of their education. And so tracking on that early literacy is so important. And so we do have an early literacy assessment in grades 4K to 2. And then we have our iReady diagnostic assessment, which is our universal screening assessment. That is a fall, winter, and spring each year, and showing progress throughout the year. It identifies students who may need options for acceleration or remediation intervention.
Just to clarify, the iReady, it has replaced what we call the MAPS test,
Yes,
right? That's the MAPS
NWEA
test.
MAP assessment. We also have a Fountas and Pinnell benchmark assessment, and that is a teacher administered assessment to determine a reading level for students, and it shows progress over the year. Our 5K to 5th grade students are all assessed with the BAS, and then select students in grades 6 through 8 are also assessed. 9th grade, we have a district administered pre-ACT for those students in the fall, and then kind of like a practice that happens in the fall. It's a district administered, and then in the spring we have the state. So we have a kind of a early one and then a later one. And then the ACT practice assessment happens for grades 10 and 11 also in the fall. That is a non-score bearing assessment, so it doesn't count as a official ACT. It's more like a practice, but it is something that we use the data from to plan instruction and really do a prediction on how our students are doing and what their needs might be, so that they are successful when it comes to that 11th grade assessment. So that's our assessment plan. And tonight we're asking the board to approve the plan as presented. Part of this work that we've been engaging in, as you know, is working through executing a data privacy agreement with Curriculum Associates for that iReady assessment, that diagnostic assessment. So what we'd like to do is provide the board with an update on where we're at with that DPA, that data privacy agreement, so that the board has a good idea of where we're at and feels comfortable with moving forward in whatever way makes sense. So our goal was to execute a data privacy agreement with Curriculum Associates that ensured that Cedarburg student data is secure and being used only for the benefit of the district as the district allows. There was some verbiage that was on their website which just had us question, and looking at their data handling and privacy policy, we wanted that looked over with a compliance attorney, and we engaged in that work just to ensure that our students' data is private and secure. So it's been a bit of a road that we've been on with Curriculum Associates. We first sent our the data handling and privacy statement of Curriculum Associates to our compliance attorney in December. And based on her review, she generated some questions. We sent them off to Curriculum Associates. They gave us some answers. We came back. Mr. Creer and a couple of us had a virtual meeting with them to get more information, and we've gone back and forth in that process over the last 6-8 months. And we also worked with our compliance attorney to say, okay, what would we need to be sure that our students' data is secure and private, and how can we ensure that? And so executing a DPA was recommended based on the wishes of the board and what we think is best. We created a Cedarburg data privacy agreement and then submitted it to Curriculum Associates and have gone back and forth with them, redlining, talking through things. What do you mean? Why are you redlining that? What does this mean? And working through that. So our negotiations have been happening from March to current. We're very, very close. So I'll go through some of the points and things that we've resolved and what's still out there. But what we really want to do is ensure that Curriculum Associates is only using student data for the good of the district. That we can say that they are operating as if they are a school official. They are doing nothing outside anything that we would want them to do with our student data. Everything is for the good of the district. So,
If I could just add something for everybody. Kristen's kind of downplaying the amount of work that she's put into the discussions with Curriculum Associates. The questions would normally generate responses rather than answers, and so we'd have to, or she would, or the lawyer would go back and I think it's been a challenge for them to, they're not used to being required to answer all these questions, and so that's why it's kind of still in flux, right?
correct.
That you've gotten good, agreements, answers on most things, but then there's some that are still open, and that's what this chart is, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. So just to show you some of the things.
Yeah, so these, just so everyone knows, these answers are the ones that are resolved, I'm assuming are resolved, because these are the ones that you went through. We didn't just take an answer from them and say, oh, okay, thanks. It's been vetted, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
A lot of times it'd be, why did you redline this? Our meaning is this. When you redline this, this is what I could interpret this to be. That's not our intent, so we need it to go back to the way we had it. Oh, we didn't mean that. Okay, well then let's keep it the way we want. We were just cleaning that up. Or tell me more about this. Okay, and then they'd give me an answer of what data are you collecting in terms of metadata. Okay, they put it in there, and they disclose that. Why? They didn't tell me why. I did ask why. No, tell me why. So just kind of digging deeper. It's kind of back and forth. Once I was able to get an actual person to talk to on the phone instead of email back and forth, it became a lot easier to have these conversations, and things started moving much more quickly. So to go through some of the issues, so they have a standard data pull for districts, and they will pull as much data that we want to put into to supply to them. Well, we operate on the less is more. The least amount of data, student information supplied is what we supply. And so things like race, gender, disability is on their data fields that could be supplied, and in the DPA, they had marked that, yes, we collect this. And I said, no, you don't. We don't supply that. We need to address that it should not be in this document. We don't send this information. Oh, right, so fix that. Okay, great. The terms, the application terms. So having a piece of language that said something like, it applies for any of the quotes for during the years, these terms, during the years of which the DPA is in place. It's a 3-year DPA. Any of the terms. Well, no, that means you can change terms. I want the terms of when it was quoted on this date with this. So, okay, sure, we can do that. We had questions. They had redlined some things about data living in backup that went to dispose of data. So at the end, let's say we sever a contract or a student leaves, we would like to be able to dispose of data. And that's a perfectly reasonable thing. And they had said, we have to say no to data in backups. And the reason being is that data in backup is not actual, it's encrypted, it's compressed. To actually get certain data out of that backup is not an easy thing, like really kind of can't be done unless you take that backup and blow it up on their servers and take the data out and put the, and put the data back. And working through that backup only exists for about 3 months. So that's reasonable. So we clarified the definition of a subprocessor. So the versus a third party. A subprocessor is someone who does technology services for them. And okay, because there's 2 definitions in our data privacy agreement, who is a third party and who's a subprocessor. So we had to make sure we were clear on some of those pieces. We requested a data storage location. We do not allow data to be stored outside the United States. It's governed then by laws that are in effect in the United States. And so we had asked for that, and they did comply and say at one point it's in Oregon and Virginia, and then they, in a next revision, it said in the United States. Clarifying why do you have to say that? Because it's on Amazon Web Servers, and if a server goes down, that data replicates to a different server in another location, which if they were as specific as currently it's in these 2 places, this DPA would not be truthful if they had to migrate data. It's still on Amazon Web Services servers in the United States. So we're fine with that. We asked them what is their security framework designation, and they came back with eventually telling us what that was and was acceptable. And then we asked for specificity in the metadata that was collected, and they did say that. They came back and told us what it was, and I am following up. One of the unresolved pieces you'll see on the next slide is around that metadata. And then we needed to have strong language around if that data is de-identified, that there was language that said, it's a little wishy-washy about the risk of re-identification. And there was a word that was used, and I don't remember what it was, and I said, that doesn't sound like strong. It's like, well, there is no risk. Oh, please, okay, please say that then. And so we got that language changed.
On this one, did they, one of the other potentials for, like, I guess the way to like secure it would be, instead of de-identifying, would be to anonymize it. Like basically put it through an electronic shredder. Did they explain why they couldn't do that or wouldn't do that?
We've only have de-identification language in here, and they, in effect, anonymize it. They change every name. Their methodology changes every student name to a random name in the census, and it cannot be re-identified. Once that's done, it's then thrown in a hopper, let's say, with all the other data that already has from all the other districts and things, and they cannot even tell whose data is whose.
I think, wasn't the lawyer a little concerned about that? Did she, was she comfortable with the language, and where is that in the agreement? Is it in the DPA?
You currently have a basic DPA, just so you can see it. In our DPA, it is in, and I can share that with you,
Okay.
it's in the Exhibit G, which talks about how the methodology to de-identify data. So that is the next slide here, and you'll see, Dave, the second item down, that they say we have an industry standard methodology. So we are, in our DPA, we require that we approve their de-identification method. And I'm not an expert on de-identification, but we have resources through the privacy forums, through the government, that have standard de-identification processes. I was able to look at those, and I can see one that matches very clearly what they're doing, but they are yet to identify actually what is the standard. And so I'm asking them to do that. So that's where we're at with that piece. We're still pushing on that one. Above that, metadata use. So they did say they collect IP addresses, the user agent, session data, and some duration, frequency, time data. And the question that I posed on the phone is, why are you collecting this? And it's all about looking at things like, this question is taking this many students this much time. That may not be a valid question. How does this work? So it's still about improving the product for us as the customer, but I want that in writing. I don't want to just have a conversation about it. And that IP address user agent session data does not actually stay with a student. It's collected in a student record, but then it's not attached to a specific student. They're using it in a different way. So it doesn't have the persistent identifiers of the student within the metadata. The last piece is a little bit of a sticking point. Because, and I am pretty comfortable with this, in that the de-identification of data and where it is shared, I'm asking, where are you sharing our de-identified data? And we know what reasons for which it's being shared. All very legally permissible, of interest to the district, that's it. But they have non-disclosure agreements with those companies who do their work, where they're not able to share who the companies are because the company's not letting them. So I know what they're doing with it, and it's all for the good of the district within the parameters, but we don't know who they are. All the data is still stored in the United States. It's de-identified. They don't have any identifiers with that de-identified data that's why there's zero risk of re-identification with these third parties. Our compliance attorney said, well, we could sign an NDA stating that we won't disclose who they are. And that would require them to go back to those third parties and request all of that work. And I'm not confident they're going to do that, but we pushed on them. to say who again. So these are the three pieces that are out there after our 8 months of work. A couple sticking points, and I anticipate that I'll have this information within the next week. That's what I've been told. So at this point, with a data privacy agreement in place, with confidence of that Curriculum Associates is acting as a school official in the way that we are asking them to do the business of the school with only the school's interest, we would be able to move forward without, within the constraints of the laws, the statutes in Wisconsin and FERPA and COPPA law, to utilize Curriculum Associates without asking for parent approval based on the law and what the intent is and how this product is being used. So I'm asking that the board move forward with approving the use of the iReady diagnostic, and it would be up to the board whether or not we would ask parents, and we already have this in place, if they would like to opt out based on what the data privacy agreement is. We could let that happen. We already have opt-out options, but just, I would like to inform parents, here's where we're at, and here's our data privacy policy, and be able to move forward with the assessment plan, and then as the board wishes, with an opt-out expressed in an email with parents. Or we could just move ahead with confidence that they are going to operate in a way that is within the law, which I believe, but however the board would like to move forward with the iReady diagnostic assessment.
Yeah, because we had a lot of questions, and it was especially around the like the use of the user data and other things, because there are some, and I'm not saying this is a Curriculum Associates issue, but there are some programs that are able to kind of link the student to different devices and then kind of get around the de-identification that way, because then they've got like, the usage or the different device data, and then they can connect the name to it outside of the school system. That was one of the concerns. And then there were other concerns about, who's getting the data, and they were very extremely vague about that at the beginning, and after your discussions and with the lawyer, I think we've got at least a partial answer, or at least a response on that. So your thought is, if we get everything we want in the DPA, if they agree to everything in that, then we're in pretty good shape, right? We're all set. If we don't get everything, there's some potential areas of less protection than what we want. Is that right? Am I saying that wrong?
Less protection, I am, based on their security pieces and everything they've supplied, I just want more information here.
Yeah.
Just tell us all of it.
Yep.
They've signed that they are only going to use de-identification in these ways, and that they have someone who does that work for them around the research to make the product better. Well, who is that? Who's the third party who does that for you? I can't tell you that.
And then the re-identification part, that was a sticking point too, I think, early on in the or maybe in midway through the conversations, right? Where, like, why won't you just anonymize it? And they didn't really have good answers. But now what you're saying is that you've worked with the lawyer, you've got definitions in here. Okay. Is there a way?
We'd like to know their exact methodology,
Yeah.
so I don't have to guess that here's all these recommended methodologies and these are acceptable. I can kind of match that up. I don't want to have to guess that.
Yeah.
Tell me, they've described what it is very clearly.
Yeah. Okay, good. And the other nice thing is that having this DPA, we're locking in the language, definitions. Otherwise, we are just at the mercy of whatever the current terms, it's like when you click, I accept, and it's almost meaningless.
Yep.
When we tried to read through it, it didn't make any sense. So if we were to like use this year with the assumption that, well, we don't know what's gonna happen with the DPA. If they accept the DPA, if they accept everything and the way we want it, then we're good. If not, then would we wanna disclose to maybe to the families, like what the potential issues are, and then,
That would be my thought. In
Yeah.
a email to families, here's the, I-ready assessment, here's the DPA, here's these 3 items that are a little vague. Everything else fits in the DPA. We just don't have clear answers here.
yeah, because a lot of times you have families, we talked about this, like, they think, oh, it's the school, everything's private and protected, and it's really not, unless you go through all this
Right.
work. And so we'd be in pretty good shape here.
Absolutely.
And so people understand maybe if you don't have children in the district currently, or you did, or maybe your children aren't using iReady. The DPAs in general, and then specifically the DPA with iReady it's part of the larger process of ensuring the district essentially. People may say, oh, well, it's just student data on testing. It's like, no, but this does have an effect on the overall district insurance, which is something the community should be aware of and concerned about. And it's nice to see that this amount of work is being put into protecting that.
It's become a greater issue just with the amount of cyber incidents and data breaches, and schools are being targeted, and student data is being targeted. It's being sold on the dark web. These are things that when we say in exhibit, I believe it's F, what are your security practices? What industry standards? You must have an audit this month, and we need to be able to see that. And that independent audit ensures that, okay, they're up to date on the industry standards of security practices.
And it's also the protecting the privacy of the students. It's not just the cyber crime issue or the hacking. It's, making sure that, the individual students' learning records are private and shared only with, if the family wants it, and it's not,
Those with
out there for data brokers.
correct. We say legitimate educational interest. And that's the only people who should have access to any type of student data.
What would be the impact to the teachers in the classroom if parents opt out? Say you get a 10% opt-out rate. What are you going to do? Because those kids,
We'll have to use regular classroom data to do our best in terms of defining what our students' needs are in a variety of areas in math and reading.
so will those students have assessments in a different way since they're not using iReady?
We don't have another way to do that at this point, other than our BAS assessment that you saw, which is a teacher administered, not on the computer, and then regular classroom assessments.
Thank you for all of your work on that. I can't imagine how many hours it took throughout the months, and just a little that I've learned about it, it's kind of frightening, all this data that's out there and what people can do with it. Do you have a sense of why they were just not forthcoming in sharing a lot of the information? Like, are they just not used to districts digging into this a little bit?
I think that's a lot of it. We did have a large presence and a very educated presence in our first meeting.
Yeah.
I don't think they took us seriously, and they are not used to having that type of inquiry. And there were people answering questions that didn't quite have, understand probably the legal impact of certain things they were saying. And that then makes us say, tell me more about that. We don't like that. Well, it's not really that. Well, why did you say it then? Because you really make me nervous now, so tell me more. So now I have to dig deeper. Tell me more, tell me more, tell me more.
Yeah, probably the best example of that was when, I don't know if you asked or if the lawyer did. It's like, you say you're not collecting data, but your CFO says here in this article that you collect 22,000 pieces of data on every student. How do you explain that? And what was their answer? Was it something?
He was speaking in hyperbole.
Yeah.
He's like,
okay, well,
that
come on.
sounds a little, like really off the cuff.
So like, but it's quoted, and yeah,
is.
so it did take Kristen and the lawyers a lot of work to just to like get to the terms and to understand to speak the same language really, right? To get on, because they really like to speak in generalities, and they like the flexibility, I think, of being able to change anything at any time, and they're not used to people asking questions.
Correct. I would say that's very accurate.
So I'll ask a quick question here. First of all, thank you for the kind of top view of everything. This is not an area of expertise at all, so I appreciate hearing the background, the timeline more or less. And just correct me if I'm wrong. It sounded as though you were asking for action from the board, but when I'm looking at the agenda, I'm seeing approve the 2023-24 assessment plan as presented, and I see the plan, I see the timeline. I don't see any language about also more or less approving moving forward with the iReady diagnostic assessment product in the recommendation. So I would just like to kind of scooch back to what is our role at the table tonight?
Approving the plan that includes the use of iReady as the diagnostic assessment for a district assessment.
And then if we think there should be any disclosures or consents or anything like that tied to it, then we would add that to the plan, or make that part of the plan, right? Or subject to it.
Direct that action to, I can make that
Okay.
however the board wishes.
Yeah, it wouldn't really be part of the plan. It would be
No.
It would be
Procedure.
Procedure to implement. Yeah.
I do have a question. If we were to put this in place and they agree to it all, we're one district of thousands that they deal with. How do we follow up and know that they're actually abiding by the agreement?
It's a really good question. Holding districts accountable, we look at their audits. We have language in here that allows us to look at their security audits, to inquire. We also have in the data privacy agreement, I will execute disposition of data every year, and asking them to dispose of data are students that age out of the iReady data. That gets disposed of. So it's things like that that you keep them engaged in, and keep the policy, the agreement live.
I remember some talk about a right to audit.
Yep,
Is that
seeing
that's
their
it?
audits,
Yeah.
yep.
So you can go and kind of look at how they do it. Now, you probably have to hire someone who knows what they're looking at to do that.
They have audits done every so often, and we can request the security audits. If they've had any incidents, security incidents, they have to let us know. That's all in the language.
Yeah, does the audit rate also apply to like making sure they're using the de-identification methodology and all that stuff?
They have to tell us if it changes at all. They cannot change anything in here. So if they want to change a de-identification methodology, they can't. They'd have to ask us to execute a new DPA.
So how do we, to Kate's question, how do we make sure they are? Like, is there a right to audit that part of it?
What I know is they're very responsive to all my questions,
Yeah.
and they get them to the right people, so it's the ask. We would have to ask. It's not a automated something.
yeah.
We'd have to do a regular ask or investigation.
Has there been any conversations as far as, what happens if they do break the agreement? Ramifications. I mean, I'm assuming iReady is not an inexpensive route to go for assessment. Is there anything like that worked out as far as what will happen if they do violate the agreement?
It would be a lawsuit.
Maybe what Kate's asking, like, if we can get some kind of liquidated damages provision, or some contracts have a provision that, hey, if you violate it, you're gonna pay us X amount of money. I'm trying to think what our damages would be in a lawsuit. We'd get a refund of the money
So,
probably.
in
but-
the document, they
Sure.
are responsible for any costs of notification and things if there is a data breach. So those are written into that area. Cost of notification to families and things like that.
Is there any language that, the district could pursue legal action? Just kind of as
It is
an
a legal
incentive for
document,
them.
so
Okay.
I'm,
If we need any additional to make sure that they are.
this is a standard agreement that most vendors are needing to execute with school districts. There's a national data privacy agreement that ours is based off of, and ours is different because it has Wisconsin language in it. And then we are very, very narrow in the scope of use of de-identified data. The scope that we have for de-identified data is usually the scope for student data in general. But we say you can't even use de-identified data for anything more than these 3 items, which are detailed in that last Exhibit G.
So it's very.
It's very, very
specific.
tight.
Okay.
I think part of the power of this too is we are one of the few, I would say we're one of the districts on the leading edge of this, although it is becoming more commonplace. So as more districts and or states actually start requiring this, that's ultimately where the teeth is gonna be in it.
Well, and so people are aware too, it's not just iReady that's going to have to sign this.
Correct.
It's anyone who is handling any type of data or anything with the district.
That's
Correct.
I think that's a change to one of the policies that's coming up later, yeah.
Yep.
Well, hopefully.
So just for clarification here, I feel like I've taken everything on board of what everyone shared, and I kind of echo the wondering that Laura mentioned about hey, when this goes out to parents, if in more detail there's a big drop-off, what happens then? So I think that's a very valid question. In my ideal world, this would be something where it's potentially 2 different recommendations, the timeline and then the actual agreement, but it sounds like they're hand in hand, if I'm understanding that all correctly. We can't necessarily get started with iReady without this in place. Am I understanding this correct?
Without the DPA in place, or without?
Yes, without, so what's being presented is more or less all of your questions answered, but not everything. There's still a few items that are, in my mind, pretty big questions to kind of wait on, and some items that were brought up at the table here that I would like answers to before saying, yep, go ahead, this makes sense. But it sounds like that's not necessarily possible, that the deadline is now in order to be able to get going, just from the timeline of when we have our next school board meeting, right? So,
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, ideally, we would be having this meeting in April or May. Again, it's the process with
Okay,
Curriculum
it's just-
Associates
okay.
that pushed it to this point here, and as Kirsten said,
Okay.
she's still getting feedback.
got it.
So yeah, that's kind of where the window is
Okay.
really short.
And quite frankly, I think there's other members at the table who've been dealing with this longer than I have and have a better understanding of it. So, I'm comfortable with kind of taking a back seat. I'm just sharing that for me, the wording of the agenda is, I just would have liked it a little differently, so that if there is a motion made, et cetera, that it's all a package deal.
Just a question, hearing all all the time you've put into it and everything we've learned and just the enormity of the student data that's collected, is iReady worth it? are there other options out there that maybe are less intrusive?
I would say they're all doing the same thing. And we'd start from ground zero with executing a DPA again.
You know, probably not sure yet. We're gonna probably find out that answer to that question, right? As we present DPAs to the other vendors who supply web content, right?
Some of them are real easy,
Okay.
and some of them are not. This is one of them that's not.
Well, I mean, I guess one thing we could, you know, we're approving it for the year. If we have issues like with, if we were to go forward and we don't get the answers we want on these open items, at least we'll know that soon enough that we can start looking for a replacement for next year if we have to. And the parents would have the disclosure or the information that they would need to make a decision. The option, I guess, the other point is if we don't do the iReady, then we'd be doing what we would be doing with the 10% with everybody, apparently, or I'm not sure how that would work, right?
We wouldn't really be doing anything else than what this would be a whole in our assessment plan.
As Kristen mentioned before, this is our screener. And the whole concept behind screeners are something that are relatively easy, using air quotes, easy to administer, but that have been vetted due to the enormity of students taking it. So when you get responses back, you have a really good idea of what a student knows or doesn't know. And so if we didn't have a product like that, and then you don't have a true screener. I mean, so now any information for intervention or anything like that would, be like it was years and years and years and years ago, where, it's kind of a guessing game with the teacher and just trying to take a look at what the student is doing, and then trying to guess, educated guess, but still a guess on what might best meet their needs.
And from essentially what you've said, even if we do end up for some reason looking for another company to have this assessment done, most likely those topics are still going to be issues and sticking points. Because like you said, it's pretty much the same across the board as to how they're handling things.
Yep.
It's possible, and we're in a fast-moving environment, I would think, too, right? And it also depends on who the company is, right? And like who are their partners? Are they tied to data monetizers, or are they not? And there are a lot of different risks you'd want to assess, I would think.
And so as you had said, if we do get a signed DPA that we are happy with, it's 3 years.
Yes.
Okay.
If anything changes, the DPA would have to be re-executed. Anything changes on their end, or any of our desires change, we can start over.
Again, that's the DPA, that's not a contract with iReady or Curriculum Associates. That's something that would be reevaluated every year.
It's just nice to know that there's possibly 3 years of not having to go through this process again.
Kristen, would you mind just reiterating what your recommendation is? Or restating, rather?
I would recommend that the board approve the 23-24 assessment plan as indicated in the document.
And then if we add to that as a condition, I think we have to cover this unknown piece here, right? So if we get good answers, then, well, I guess we're gonna send out a communication to the family. So if we get
I
the
would
good answers,
recommend
it'll
that
be
either way, we
Yeah.
approve as shown, with transparency with the DPA to parents, with the items that we've asked for more information about, and then we would communicate again when we have any resolution or more information on that.
So if we tell parents, here's the product, here's the DPA, here's the questions we don't have answered, and, review this, and you've got a right to opt out, but we
If you're
recommend you don't.
uncomfortable with moving forward, not knowing these,
Yeah.
these
Yep.
little
If we
smoke
don't
and
know.
mirrors pieces,
Yeah.
if we want to call them that, you have the option to opt out.
Has the compliance attorney, does he or she have any recommendations on
Yep.
moving forward if we don't get these three pieces resolved?
She said, find out if the board is comfortable with moving forward with just where we're at with these items. We're down to so few. They basically agree to everything in our document. It's just, we're asking a few more questions. How do I know that de-identified is that process you're using is an industry standard?
Yeah, the three items are pretty big.
Yep. And then, okay, you can't tell me you're third parties, but they're only doing these three things with our data and it's de-identified. As a parent, are you okay with that? And then, what are you doing collecting this metadata? And so getting that actually written instead of a conversation is what I wanted. So I can say, yep, see, this is what they said.
And that would be part of the DPA, because that's the last pieces, right?
Would it make any sense to approve the assessment plan without iReady in one motion, and then a second motion to attach some stipulations to just the iReady? Would that clarify it? Or simplify it at all?
Well, I guess that would be only if you are considering not approving iReady unless they answer these, to whatever our satisfaction would be.
Yeah, because I'm thinking if we were to put it all together as one, as it's here, and then with the instruction that these open items are disclosed to the parents in an email if they are open items, and they have it's transparent. Here are the questions we still have. Here's the DPA. Here's the open, I guess you call them open questions. I don't want to call them concerns. Let the parents judge that, and then okay, you've got an option to opt out if you want, and I think that might be the simpler way to go, just to have it all in one package, unless someone's you think you want to vote on it specifically, separately, yay or nay, we might want to carve it out, but I don't know.
I think it makes more sense to do it as one, to
Yeah.
make a motion to approve the 23-24 assessment plan in addition to 2 communications with parents, one on the current status of the unresolved or undefined issues, and then another message from the district as to when or if those are solved, along with letting them know that they have the option to opt out. So it would be approving it and then approving 2 communications on the status of the unknowns.
Is the iReady contract yearly? I know the DPA is 3 years, so if
The iReady contract is
they
yearly.
didn't give us adequate answers, even though we'd approve it for this year, we still could look into
Correct.
something for the following year if we could find something that we felt met our concerns better.
So, sorry. So motion-wise, what I have from Kristen, your recommendation is to approve the assessment plan as presented. What I'm gathering from the table is, this is just writing things down. I want to make sure I'm understanding where everyone's coming from. Approving the assessment plan as presented, provided any outstanding issues as noticed in the presentation are resolved prior to communication being sent to parents regarding any testing.
The one correction would be if they're not resolved, we would explain that. So
Okay.
just whatever, we would explain whatever level of resolution there is.
Okay,
is
The
in that
status of.
communication.
Yeah, so what we would have to do prior to students participating is saying, this is the status of unresolved issues.
Negotiations, questions we need answers to
Yep.
yet.
You've got a choice to opt out, and then whenever there are answers,
When there's more information, we will communicate it.
let them know.
okay.
We might have the answers next week, who knows, right?
Right.
Let's hope.
I have a question going way back on just the assessment calendar before we got into iReady. And it's more so on, I know we list when we're doing these assessments, but I guess I have a question like when the results come out, how they're reported to the board. Because I look at, we do iReady in the fall and iReady, mid-year, and I think Alan covered that at a curriculum meeting. But I know we did one then in spring. Is there ever a presentation? Where does the results come from? Where we started, where we ended? Kind of a wrap-up of where the school year, how we did as a whole? I mean, so, it's the iReady, all of these. When,
Usually in the fall, when we,
AP tests, when do we find out how we as a school did? Just all of these. I know some are embargoed, is that by the state, but it just would be nice to update this calendar with when we can expect or how we, how they're presented.
Yep.
Because I guess I don't remember getting results on all of these last year, but that may be me, so.
Some of those we probably wouldn't see as a board. Like some of the internal ones, the district assessments.
we have some options on whether they came out in an update or at the board. In the past, we've done a September review of data. Depending, as time has gone on, that data comes later, and then we jump into report cards, and then it's been included some in the report card, and so easily we could make sure that we have a review of last year's data.
Because in policy 2623, it says the results of each school-wide, program-wide, and district-wide test be made part of the public record. So what does that necessarily mean?
We do email it, so it would be a public record, all those results, subject to open records, things like that. So I don't know if that makes it a public record or if it has to be in a board meeting to be a public record.
Yeah, I think to answer your question on that one is, as you mentioned, the fall and winter ones we did through curriculum meetings.
Okay.
The spring one, we haven't yet, and part of that is waiting to pull it all together, and so we can give each, here's where we were at iReady. And actually internally, we've looked at this where we've seen the correlation between the iReady scores and the forward exam. And again, really just kind of waiting for the embargo to end so that we can share that to the whole board. And so really, you're going to get the spring iReady, all the forward exam, which comes along with the ACT as kind of that culminating piece. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen until October, November is probably when that report would be, just because they hold it that long. So we do have an option, and it's something that the board would have to do in a closed session, where we could share the information with the board in a closed session earlier after we get the information. But that means nobody can talk about it. So.
Or would there be the option to do a full diagnostic at the same time we cover the report card after the embargo's over? If we just,
Yeah.
this is the time of the year, we look at all the information we've got so we know.
In the past, I've done one in September or October on just the assessment data. And then the final report card doesn't usually come out till November, and then I usually do a November just report card. I would assume we did it last year, but you get to the point where they all, many years being here.
Yeah, I think that.
So we'd have to look.
But then when does the ACT then, because I don't remember the ACT scores, they used to be something
They're
else.
embargoed.
Yep.
They're embargoed.
Yep. All that, because it's all wrapped into the Wisconsin assessment system.
Oh, yeah, part of this.
Yep.
I'm almost kind of envisioning like we have our budget, the big district budget meeting, if we have a big district assessment meeting where we can cover everything and look at the whole picture at one time.
Wonderful. Yep.
All right, any more discussion on the assessments? Questions for Kristen? All right, does anyone have a motion? Or,
I would make a motion to approve the 23-24 assessment plan with the knowledge that parents will be communicated with about the in-process issues, given notice that they have the option to opt out, and then subsequent communications would be given when those issues have been resolved.
would you be interested in adding to your motion language about disclosure of the DPA and other, the DPA itself?
Yes.
Yeah. What else would you be planning on disclosing besides that, Kristen? The DPA, the information, opt-out?
Those are the three.
Those are the
Yeah.
three big
Yeah.
things.
We have a
yeah.
general parent
Yeah.
letter that
Okay.
would include it with of what the iReady diagnostic assessment is, and so we'd include it with that, add that language, add the DPA, and clearly state what the issues that are in discussion and the opt-out.
Okay, so the
option.
motion then is to approve the 23-24 assessment plan with the communication to parents and families on the status of these three open items that are at page 12 of the presentation, depending on however they resolve at the time of the letter, along with advising them that the parents that they can opt out, and also that they will, that the email will, or the communication will include a copy of the DPA or access to it. That good?
Yes, that sounds great.
Okay, that's the motion.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All right, any further, sorry? Any further discussion?
I'm a little uncomfortable that they're dragging their feet in answering these. I'm a little bit, the fact that it's taken so long to get answers and these three that are kind of big pieces are still out there. But I do recognize that we need to move forward and get it on the table. So I guess I'm willing to go along with that, and hopefully as we see this unfold, we can make decisions for the following year.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best route.
Yep, I appreciate that sentiment, Kate, as well.
Anything else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you. Thanks
Thank
for
you
your
for
work.
your work on this.
Yes, thank you.
And for your anticipated continued work on it.
All right, the next recommendation is for the proposed update to the 2023-24 open enrollment seat allocation. In January, the board approves the number of open seats that will be available through open enrollment for the next school year. In early August, we did a review of our current enrollments just to see where we were at. And based on current enrollments and our class range policy, did identify that we have the ability, if the board so chooses, to add 9 more open enrollment seats, 5 at 4K and 4 at second grade, with 0 seats at any other grade throughout the district. Again, by adding those, and you can see that in the information you have, that does put us at the low end of the class size range.
And again, this is based on your assessment, got the room.
Correct.
And when you say we're within range, did you give us a breakdown?
Yeah, it's on the sheet right here. So, 4K, our class size range is 15 to 20. So by adding those 5 students, we would have class sizes of 15 for an average. At second grade, the class size range is 22 to 28. Again, if we were to add those 4 students there, then we would be at class sizes of 22.
Okay, it's not a huge number.
And moving forward, looking at 4K going to kindergarten, there would be, in your projection, ample room to
Yes.
accommodate kindergarten?
Yeah, when we take a look at where we were at last year to where we are this year in kindergarten, we would have ample room.
Okay. Good. All right, so we need a motion on this if anyone is so inclined.
Do we have any, I'm sorry, my question is a little bit delayed here, but do we have any, the seats that are recommended, do we have more requests than the seats that are recommended, or is it within that recommendation?
So actually, we have
Or more,
so
I think I said more requests.
Yeah, so in 4K, the waiting list.
Yeah,
We
thank
have a
you.
waiting list at 4K. There are currently more students on the waiting list than the 5 that we would be looking to do. There are no students on the waiting list in second grade.
Thank you.
All right, so I will leave this open for a couple more moments here if anyone wants to make a motion.
I would motion to approve the projected open enrollment offerings for August.
I would second that.
All right, motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope, motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
The next recommendation is related to the board policies that were discussed at last week's policy committee, and so that is Board Policy 5113, Open Enrollment Program, 5200, Attendance, 7540.02, Web Content, Apps and Services, and 9130, Public Requests, Suggestions, or Complaints.
And these were reviewed at the policy committee, and I think the committee voted unanimously to recommend approval.
Correct.
So if any motions or questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to adopt the policies as listed here.
All right, so we've got a motion to approve the policy changes marked here in item E, right?
I will second that.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
Which of these, if any, are going back to the policy committee in October? As,
None of them.
or was that discussed for any of them to go back for further discussion?
Yeah, there was one, and it's not here.
Policy 0144.5, Board Member Behavior was
Oh,
one
no,
that
no,
was
I'm not talking about
postponed,
that. No, we don't
Um,
need to address that. So in the policies that are here, was
Okay.
there, I'm remembering discussion from that meeting, and I see the portions that were recommended. So if you don't mind just letting me scroll a bit here.
Sure. I think the one that had this discussion was the Policy 5113 Open Enrollment Program.
Okay,
There was a line there that we had some discussion about, took out. There's more conversation, we certainly could do that, provide more information if needed. But per where we left the committee meeting, there wasn't any that was asked to come back.
okay.
We do have another policy committee meeting at the end of September, and there'll be a bunch of the Neola offerings, and we certainly can bring any other policy up at the same time. October 4th? Okay.
All right, anything else? Any questions, comments, motions?
Procedurally, if if a board member wanted that specific policy looked at again during that October meeting, is that a individual request that would be sent, or is that a recommendation from administration to include that in that meeting?
You would, the board member, you just talked to me, and we'd talk through what the suggestion was, and then it would end up becoming a board administrative request.
Okay.
I-
Okay, thank you.
I believe, Connie, your earlier question is to discussion regarding policies. I believe it was 9130, section D, the last paragraph, the conversation regarding the word shall.
Okay, so, can you remind, we don't have a motion on the floor, right? We're still in
That's correct.
discussion? Okay,
Not yet.
okay.
Do we?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
So,
sorry, I totally forgot. We've been talking too long.
yeah, so if we
So who
circle
made the
back,
motion? So we got a motion and a second, that's right, we're
Okay.
discussing. That's right, sorry about that, everyone. Go ahead, sorry. So we got a motion, yeah, we're discussing the motion.
yeah, thank you. My understanding at this point is if I or any other board member would like to see any of these policies brought back in October for further discussion, that it's a request made to our superintendent and then included potentially in that October time. So I'm comfortable with that. And
Yeah, I think that would be the
continuing-
first step.
continuing on.
Yeah, and then you, I guess, I think if that didn't satisfy you, then you would go to the chairman.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, so I've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Another unanimous motion.
All right. If we could jump back to the very first
Yep.
one, Kara's not able to be here this evening.